Hi guys, welcome to my vlog. I'm the author CL Rose. I have 2 books published, A Second Chance and The Blood Moon Matron. I'm also a mother. I also love to read books. I'm going to start trying to do some reviews on them. I am also on a journey at the moment trying to reassess how I see food and exercise, and how I'm trying to undo some toxic traits I've picked up over the years. That's just a little summary, I suppose. But today I will be talking about Throne of Glass. I started reading Throne of Glass last year. I have a previous video where I talked about just introduce Throne of Glass, and I talked about the first 2 books that I read. I read Throne of Glass and then Crown of Midnight. So today's books I will be talking about today will be Heir of Fire and Assassin's Blade. Right, let's get into it. So where we left last time, we at the end of Crown of Midnight, Selena ends up, sorry, there's so many names for her. Selena ends up going off to Fae land, in a way, if you want to call it that, because she reveals that she's actually Fae. And Kale suggests she goes there to do some training, I think, and perhaps, I'm not quite sure why Kale sent her, I can't remember why. But he sort of suggests to the King of Ottoland that it might be worth her going there, and maybe he does it in the hopes of trying to protect Selena, because obviously Kale loved Selena a lot, and I felt like Selena perhaps didn't feel exactly the same as he did. I think she loved him, but I don't think she felt the way he did for her from the very beginning, to be honest. So Kale suggests that she goes off there. She does. She goes, and you find May, which is the queen of the Fae, and you meet her court, which is like Rowan and all of them in her court. Obviously, you primarily focus on Rowan. He's the one that looks after most of her training and helps her try and use her magic. Again, I can't remember what she's called in this book, but she picks another name she goes under. She doesn't go under Aelin or Selena. She picks a completely different name. And she becomes this person while she's in that world. This is the first book where you sort of get multiple parts of the world. So normally you get a lot of different POVs in all of these books, but they're actually in different places. So there's different storylines sort of going on, not one storyline from different perspectives, if you understand what I mean. So you sort of have Selena off with the Queen of the Fae. Rowan, she's learning about all that history and learning how to harness her powers and her flames and her Fae form. She's learning all of that up to against there's Dorian and Kale and Rifthold, and there's obviously still the rebel movement going in Rifthold, and they're trying to find out a bit more about that. Dorian sort of meets Sorsha, and that sort of develops a different story. Kale meets Adian, and you find out about Adian and why he's come back on the scene. He's the leader of part of the army for Orderland, but you actually find he ends up being what's it called, Orderland's whore or something like that. He's called, and it's because he's been basically double crossing Orderland the whole time. He's sort of, though he works for them, he's loyal to Selena, or Aelin as she's called, and Terrasen, and he's doing a lot of things to make sure that they get back. The Bane is able to fight for her eventually. So you meet Adian. I feel like that was a bit strange at first. I really feel like, unless I've misinterpreted it, I thought that he was intended to marry Selena, which was a bit odd. That was a bit weird. At first, I didn't think anything of it, but then as their relationship grew, I was like, well, that's a bit weird. They're pretty much brother and sister. That's pretty odd, even though they're cousin. But apparently she's Rowan's cousin too, but it's so so like far removed that it doesn't count. It's weird. I don't know. Anyway, so that was a bit odd at first, but I don't think I fully understood it, to be honest. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Then you find out a bit more about Dorian's trying to do a bit more about his magic, and he's sort of trying to use his magic, and obviously then he meets Saoirse. I feel like she could have maybe had a Saoirse in earlier in the books. I feel like that could have grown, particularly in Crown of Midnight. I feel like there could have been a bit more of growth with Saoirse and Dorian from that book, because I feel like it was quite quick. Their relationship grew very quickly and very suddenly. Yeah, it was definitely my least favourite of the bunch. Don't get me wrong, I still liked it. I think it was my least favourite because there wasn't really that much romance in it. I know, I'm sorry, it's so boring to hear, but I really, really like romance. And obviously everyone's in between relationships in this book. There is a little bit of romance with Saoirse and Dorian. Like I said, I wish it could have been grown a bit more. I loved meeting Adrian. And what my favourite part of this book was Manon and the 13. So you have Aelin in with the Queen of the Fae. Then you've got Dorian and Chaol and Riftal and Adrian with the Bane and all of them in Riftal, and the rebels are there. And then you've got Manon and like all of her like stories in forming the 13 and their wyverns and how all like the witches and all their different like the Crokins and stuff like that. Like, I loved Manon. I remember reading something where people didn't like Manon's bit in Heir of Fire. I actually really loved Manon because I feel like I knew she'd have an arc. But she's so bad in the beginning. And I loved it. Was that wrong? I loved it. I loved how evil she was. And I loved how, like, cruel they all were. And it was just, like, a bit of fresh air. I was like, oh, she's actually quite evil. I loved it. Obviously, the whole thing, they were all really cruel and everything like that. And I loved their growth and all of them. I loved that so much. I loved when Rowan at the end obviously sworn a blood oath to Aelin. I feel like it's split into two. Their relationship for me is split into two. It's pre-blood oath and post-blood oath. Pre-blood oath, I didn't really like them. I didn't really like Rowan and Selena. I don't know why. It felt like it was really rushed and forced, and I didn't really enjoy it. I feel like 1 minute they're literally destroying each other. They're literally at each other's throat. And I mean, Rowan really beat her in one scene, and I found that really uncomfortable to read. And I feel like it was never brought up again. They never discussed it. And I feel like he never apologised for it. And I feel like he should have been like, sorry about your face. Do you know what I mean? I probably shouldn't have pounded your face in like that. I feel like that was warrant of an apology. I understand that perhaps she was very mean to him, but I don't think she should have been pummeled in the face for it. So I really, really didn't like that. So that's what I mean. So when he sort of was released from his blood oath to Maeve, and then he swore it to Aelin, I think I liked the relationship after that. But before that, I found it very uncomfortable. Though obviously I know they got close and it was the start of a friendship before he did the blood oath, and they were quite close. It just felt very rushed. That book was very, very rushed. You sort of meet Rowan, and then suddenly, like, they hate each other, they love each other. And I'm like, whoa, hang on a second. Everyone just needs to slow down a second. We've got 8 books. We could have grown that a bit more. But again, it definitely wasn't my favourite book, but I did enjoy it still. I did really enjoy it. I loved all the different parts of it. I loved all the different characters and all the character growth in it. The ending was heartbreaking. I hated the Saoirse part. I actually hated that. That was horrible. And then obviously the word colour for Dorian was heartbreaking, knowing that he was going to have a really shit next book, basically. I knew his next bit was going to be really bad when they put that collar on him, and obviously Saoirse was killed in front of him. I hated that Chaol ran, and he didn't fight for him, even though he said to do it. I didn't like that he ran. It really made me not like... I really like Chaol, but I really didn't like him there. I really thought he was a bit shitty, to be honest. I didn't really like how he did that. I thought it was a bit cowardly. I don't like that, again, they were... Aelin and Rowan were separated just as they were getting together, sort of thing, just as they started to form their court. They were separated. I was like, okay, I get it. It's for the drama of it all, and it brings it into the next book. But I wish there kind of had been a little bit more of a thing. They kind of just sort of went, right, I'm going to go back to Rifthold. You're going to stay here. And he was like, what? What do you mean I'm going to stay? And she's like, yeah, you're staying here. Boom. She got on the ship and buggered off. So I didn't really enjoy that part, to be honest. But yeah, overall, I did enjoy it. It wasn't my favourite, but I did enjoy it. Next one I read it in chronological, not chronological order, I read it in romantic order. So the next one I read was Assassin's Blade. That was really hard. What can I say about Assassin's Blade? I loved that everything that you read in the later books pretty much starts off in Assassin's Blade. I love Skulls Bay, I love Rolf, I loved, meeting Irene, and I loved the Mute Master and Ansel, and I just loved how it was all linked, like it was all there. She pretty much did everything in that book that sets off the tone for the ends of the book. You meet a lot of people in that book that are very significant. I knew obviously from reading Throne of Glass that Sam died, and I knew it would be very heartbreaking. I felt like their relationship, again, I felt like it was a bit quick. I feel like they were enemies for quite a while. Then they were all right, Skulls Bay, and then suddenly they were together. And I was like, hang on a second. I knew they weren't going to get happily ever after, but I feel like they didn't get very long together. Because yet again, they sort of went back to Rifthold, sort of left Erebin and sort of went to like start their own life. And then he died. I was like, oh shit. But don't get me wrong, that's obviously to build her character. She was trying to show how much pain Aelin had gone through. And that was, again, a key point, because you find out later why she had to go through so much pain and why she had such a bad life and all that sort of stuff. So you find all that out. It's horrible and it's heartbreaking and I hated it. But it made me really, really love Selena. I loved it. It was so good. I'm glad I read that fourth, because I think if I'd read that first, I might have forgotten all the characters, because after that, in like, not so much Queen of Shadows, but more Empire Storm and Tower of Dawn, all these characters sort of come back and you meet them again and you find out a bit more about them and how they sort of link in to Aelin's army and stuff like that. So it was really good reading that. I think when I read it again, because I will read it again, I have no doubt I will not read these books again. I think I'll reread them fairly soon, to be honest. I might do Assassin's Blade first. And see if that sort of changed the flow, see if that made any difference or if I preferred it that way. Because now I know the world and the story, I'll think I'll probably be okay with reading it first. But I am glad I read it fourth. It was a massive impact romantically. Broke my heart, obviously. And the whole, my name is Selena Sardarthian and I am not afraid. Horrendous. So sad, because you know Sam Cortland was saying that. I'm Sam Cortland and I'm not afraid. Do you know what I mean? Like, be still my heart. Yep, so that was the next two books. The next books I'm going to do will be Queen of Shadows, and then I will maybe try and attempt to do the tandem read on the next one as well. Right, see you back on the next one, guys.